Hi, I'm Finn. I just wanted to do a follow-up video. I did one before about living and dealing with alcoholic parents. This one, I just wanted to touch on some of the personality traits that develop for people like us who have lived in dysfunctional family or grown up in dysfunctional family environments, and not always bad. So what I'm actually focusing on today are traits that I believe are actually assets. I blog at a blog called Worthy Ordeal, which is turning your adversity into your assets. So I truly believe that the beauty of having grown up in a highly stressful, anxious environment and having dealt with problems is that you develop a vast number of skills and attributes that a lot of people don't have, right? And it's only until you actually start looking at things as an asset that you actually may find some peace with the past. I'm not saying you forget the past or that you condone anything that actually happened. Acceptance doesn't mean that. Acceptance is that you can accept that it just did happen, right? When you get to that point, there's almost a weight that can be lifted off because you actually can move forward seeing some of the assets, well, certainly major amount of assets that have come from your experiences. So one common trait I've found with people who, and this is including myself, who have grown up in very stressful home environments, is resilience. So it's a word that's thrown around a lot, but really it's someone who, despite things, just seems to get through, right? And they're determined. There's a level of determination in that because we could all easily give up. I mean, we could all, you could end it all tomorrow. I mean, the fact is, like, there's something that has to keep going and getting through that you're wanting. And I think the deepest part of that we often don't let our minds wander to is just, what is it that you want? Because you wouldn't keep going if there wasn't something you did want. And I really believe resilience is a massive asset that children of alcoholics and people who are dealing with drug addiction, any of these things actually start to develop. The second one is emotional maturity. So it doesn't always happen. I've met people who they're referred to as, there's two types. It's in a book actually by Scott Peck, and he refers to called The Road Less Travelled, which I highly recommend. But there's two personality traits he sort of defines as the character disordered person and the neurotic. And you've got either types, and they're on either spectrum. So you're not always just one, you sort of could be a bit between. But a character disordered person blames the world for their problems. All right, so if this is you might want to prick your ears, listen up. Character disordered people don't ever look at themselves to see what role they played, and they don't ever seem to want to take any self-responsibility. They believe it's everybody else's job too, and if something's gone wrong in their life, it's because of somebody else. And I can say that having dealt with an alcoholic parent, this was actually a huge factor in my dad's problems. I truly believe the inability to actually just want to take self-responsibility has led to more and more problems. And so I see a level of the character sort of thing there. The neurotic, on the other hand, which I actually almost verge a bit towards, and I've moved away slowly from that spectrum, is someone who takes too much responsibility. So there's somebody who feels responsible for everything. So I mean, I've been in situations where I feel responsible for someone's feelings, right? Which is absolutely absurd. You're not responsible for anybody's feelings. They're responsible for their feelings. And so I used to take on a lot like that, like feeling like I had to be responsible for how I was perceived, how others perceived other people, like how an environment felt. Like there's a lot of responsibility and taking care of and this sort of thing. And that's the joke being that the neurotic type actually does incredibly well in psychology as a patient because, of course, they want to take responsibility. So they'll be like, oh, yes, that is my problem. Maybe I should do something about that. There's a level where you've got to look at the world that not everything is something you're responsible for either, right? So that's having good boundaries. So, but one thing I just wanted to get at in that was the emotional maturity thing, being that a lot of people who've gone through problems generally tend to be people who move on to do a lot of self-work, and it's a huge attribute. So having the ability to take emotional responsibility for yourself is a massive, massive asset, because there are a lot of people who do not do it. So again, another personality trait that comes from having grown up in a very stressful home environment, right? Third one, I believe, is insight and perception. So a lot of people who've grown up in family environments like that tend to be, and I'm only going by this by myself and actually what my brother's like and a few other people I've met, highly intuitive. You tend to read signs and be to the world. I mean, you tend to read things and know things without even knowing how you knew them, if that makes sense. Pick up energy, the feeling of things. You almost communicate, not so much communicate, but you just get things on a level that others might not seem to have gotten. You know, the energy of a situation, you might feel uncomfortable somewhere and you sort of tend to know why as well, whereas someone else just knows they're uncomfortable. You can kind of go a bit further and you know why, or you read a situation and there's this level of hypervigilance in that you're someone who's probably picking up the environment because you've learned to be very on guard. There's the good and bad parts of that, clearly, because it can move a lot into a lot of anxiety problems, but there's a huge asset in being insightful and perceptive about your environment and picking up when things need to be done, and initiative. There are a lot of massive, it's huge actually asset. So I'll be touching more on these in my vlog, but they're just ones I wanted to sort of affirm to people who have experienced them and know that, you know, not everything you've been through is in vain. There's a lot of, if you can look at it, that there are a lot of advantages. It's a huge weight off your shoulders. The fourth one, which I really value, is generally people who've grown up in these environments. I'm not saying you do have to have grown up in these environments. A lot of people can be, what I was going to say, is empathetic and compassionate. So a lot of people can be that and they haven't gone through any stress, right? However, I've noticed a lot of people who can really empathise with others. And again, empathy is a huge one because it's how we connect with humankind. It's how we connect with each other. And I think people who have been through a lot feel a lot. So and there's not enough compassion in the world. So it's a massive asset. And if it's utilised in a business opportunity, if you're thinking of going into business, you're an entrepreneur, or any career, anything really, actually, it's the ability to sort of get humans and feeling and is just huge. The other one, the fifth one I'd say, is commitment. Sometimes we use that in a detrimental way when we're too committed. So if you're a caretaker type, and I want to use the word enabler, but if you're someone who's really like looked after somebody has a problem, you can be overcommitted. All right. So, but commitment certainly isn't. It's not a detriment because it's a massive asset. There's out in the world there are a lot of people who don't give a rat's ass. So to have commitment as an attribute is a huge one because there are a lot of people out there who really just don't care. Again, a lot of these ones I'm mentioning, there is clearly flip sides to them because anything in life can have a flip side in that if it's taken too far, there's a negative aspect. And often your strengths are your weaknesses and you have to watch out for that. But I just wanted to clarify in the fact that when we've gone through terrible things, we can often reminisce about the past and there's a lot of pain there and sometimes there's a lot of stories there. But I like to get, this is a personal thing underneath, what did I get from that? Like, I can't go back to the past. I cannot change it. But what have I learned from having gone through that? And that's what I'm focusing on because I know that they're my biggest assets, the things I've been through. They set me apart, really, and they'll actually set you apart in what you choose to do. When you find what your calling or your message is for the world and you follow that path for you, the thing you want to share with the world, what you'll find are the things, your strongest points are the things that you developed through your most stressful times. And they're going to be your greatest attributes. So that's just what I wanted to share. There are plenty more, and you may even want to share them below the video. You might have thoughts of some that I didn't. Or if you have any other insight about it. Of course, anything I'm saying is just, for me, it's a personal opinion. That's common sense. I'm not here to argue, and I'm also not here to argue about whose journey was hard or any of that sort of stuff. I don't focus on things like that. I think the emphasis is always on where you're going. It's more important. It's always more important. And yeah, just I'd love to hear if anyone else has any insight on any skills or characteristics they've developed from growing up in an alcoholic home or any home that was highly dysfunctional, and what they believe that attribute is and how they maybe utilise that now. I'd love to know. All right, bye.